I've been sleeping so poorly. I feel like a zombie. It's too bad we're not making a zombie card today. That would be fitting. Hello everyone and welcome to another card video. I have some fun things from the latest My Favorite Things release, and let me show you what I've got. I have some cards to show you. I have quite a few cards and I like them a lot. So let me show you what I've got and then let's make a card. I have here some products from the new release. Most of the stamp sets do have coordinating dies to purchase separately. Like this stamp set here, this one is called Sending Sunshine and Smiles. And I think it's adorable. This is the one that we're going to be using in today's video. And it has like this adorable rainbow, which I think goes great with the repeating rainbows background stamp that I also have from the new release. So we're going to use those two together on a card. I did make this card using tall trees and also the Your Ext-ROAR-dinary. But I absolutely love these trees. They were inspired by True, the Magic Kingdom. I don't know, my son watches it. So I also made this card using very similar products, but just a different color scheme. But you can find out more about those on my blog. I also used this one. This one uses the Floral Whimsy stamp set with coordinating dies, and I stamped them just with a crap ton of different cardstock and clear embossing ink. Here is the card that we're going to be using today. This is using the Sending Sunshine and Smiles stamp set, and this is we're just going to be ink blending and splattering our hearts out today. First, I needed to make a mask. For my sentiment, we are going to mask an area on my card panel so that later I can stamp the sentiment on that area and it not be inhibited by the background stamp. I'm going to use Nocturne Claire because it's here, but it doesn't matter because it's just the mask. I'm stamping this on Avery repositionable label sheet, and I'm going to cut it out, just fussy cutting it. I know this is terrible and it really doesn't look all that great. I wish I had a coordinating die to cut it out, especially these scripty ones, the scripty sentiments. I wish there were coordinating dies. I really do. But I want to cut it out with and leave enough space so that I can get the stamp positioned in that same area later. So it looks okay. I don't think I did too bad. A die would have been better, but you know. I hate sneezing. It hurts. This card panel is cut to 3.5 by 4 3/4, and it's positioned landscape so that I can have like a longer card instead of a taller card. I don't know, whatever. I also made myself a stencil, okay, because I'm going to use it later to do some ink blending. And I positioned my mask kind of in the upper right-hand corner of where my circle is going to be, just to leave a space for the stamp itself. I'm inking this red rubber background stamp with Nuvo clear. I think I use both Nuvo in this video and Gina K watermark. I have them both. I reach for them both. And I'm using Gina Clear embossing powder for this. Because I was using white cardstock, I could use clear because it went with my color scheme. But I also use white embossing powder on this card, and you don't need both. You can just use the white. But I'm just heat embossing this entire panel with those repeating rainbows, making a mess, heating it from the back first, because this takes some time. It's a lot. Your cardstock could warp, so you got to have a little bit of a technique where you go to the paper and you keep your heat tool moving as to not warp it too much. We're going to use another Misty just in case we have to do this more than one time. All right, I believe I have positioned the beautiful right back where I had masked, and I think it worked out really well. It wasn't perfect, but it was in the spot. I did also use some clear embossing powder and heat emboss the sentiment as well. So now we are loading it up with my stencil that I created. I forget how big this circle is. I think it's like 2.5 inches. I literally held it up to the beautiful and to see what would look good. And that's how I picked it. I know, I'm so sorry that eyeballing it isn't more technical so that I could help others do it. I'm using iCrafter blending brushes, the blending daubers, the ones that kind of fit on your finger. They were the perfect size for this task, and I'm just blending a rainbow in my circle, designating each spot for this, 6 little spots of color within this circle of rainbow loveliness. I love how it makes the repeating rainbows pop in the background. I think it turned out great. It was at this point that I was inspired to not color my images, but to ink blend to add color to the images. So I started to heat emboss my images the same exact way as I just did the background, only using these clear stamps instead of the red rubber stamp, using the same exact materials, same exact technique. That's just how I heat emboss. Now, the next parts of this process were a little silly because I wanted to try out a new to me tool. It's not a new tool, but I'm going to use a tool that's used for something else and use it to ink blend these little tiny images. So, as I finish heat embossing these images, you're going to see me use the coordinating dies to cut them out. The more intricate dies, I do cut them from copy paper first so that I can align them more easily, especially when they're clear heat embossed on white. This is really hard to see, okay, which let me finish explaining. I'm cutting them out. You should totally ink blend them while they're on the paper because it's so much easier, especially these little raindrops, okay, and then cut them out. But me, I wanted to be hard-headed and stubborn and use something new to see if it could help. I'm just being silly. This is me experimenting and trying new things. This is a stiletto that I use for sewing. It's by Clover, okay, but it has a silicone tip on the end. Its actual purpose is to be used as an additional finger to help feed things through a sewing machine. And so I like to ink blend, and sometimes I get my fingers down in the ink blending, amongst other things. Putting hair everywhere, hair everywhere. So I'm using it as an additional finger, one with a silicone tip that can easily be cleaned off, right? Now you feel me and my craziness. I did not want to share my stiletto, so I bought a new one just for ink blending. I'm going to mark this in some way so that it is going to be the ink blending one. I am using the mini ink blending tools from Ranger, and whatever ink was left over on my stencil mat to actually color these images, it does not take very much at all. And what I failed to show you was after I blended on the ink, I did use a microfiber towel to wipe off any excess ink that might have gotten on the embossing powder to make it brighter, whiter again. This is my skull dish from Twiddler's Nook. I put some feet on the bottom of it. The feet are actually supposed to be used for sewing rulers so that they are non-slick, and it works wonderful. If you want to make anything stick to your glass mat, use those ruler feet. After I ink blended all of my images, I did ink blend a little tiny rainbow. I'm going to splatter, and to use as a palette, because I'm going to splatter so many different colors, I'm going to use this plastic Deflecto. Yeah, made by Deflecto. It's just plastic. It has feet on the bottom. It has some thumb holes. I'm using my Catherine Pooler mini ink cubes today to color these images, and they fit in this little palette wells perfectly. So it was like the perfect thing to use for this project. I decided to put my old Ranger matte, silicone matte, in the bottom of my splat box so that I can wipe it out in between each use. That way, I don't contaminate all my other projects. Genius! Not so genius is the fact that I could not splatter on these images. They're small, but I couldn't, and it was splattering in like this straight pattern, like this very symmetrical straight line, and I couldn't fix it. It just kept getting worse and worse. So finally, I was just like, whatever, it's just going to be this way. The most symmetrical splatter I've ever seen. Moving on, we're just splattering away. I splattered all the things to make it a little bit springy with the rain and kind of incorporate all the images together. I even splattered the rainbow, even though you can't see it. And now we need our kind of sub-sentiment, spring. The card says, beautiful spring. We're stamping it on black cardstock using white heat embossing. You know, it's kind of like a very great way to do a sentiment, at least in my opinion. You don't really need to see me do this again, do you? Because that's a lot of heat embossing in one video. Just saying. So the last piece of the puzzle needs to be cut out, and I tried desperately to cut it out straight, but I did not. It is not straight. It is very wonky, and just wait. This whole card ends up being wonky because I put it on the card base wonky. I try to eyeball it to the best of my ability, and sometimes it's not very good. And sometimes you don't notice it at all until you're editing the photographs of it. And that's when you just say, you know, life. I didn't say life, but I can't curse here. It's frowned upon. These images are being put on with different levels of foam adhesive. Some are being put flat to the cardstock with liquid adhesive from Nuvo, and others are being popped up with the square scrapbook adhesive foam adhesives. But I've kept everything together in my skull dish, and you know what you can see right there on the front? That line of splatter. Blah, 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 blah. Like that poor little ladybug was hit with a paintball gun. The one even looks like it's close to her eye, like it's a little tear, like she's crying. I love how it turned out despite the ladybug tear. I would love to know what your opinion is in the comments. I always want to know what your opinion is. These are the two cards that I made side by side in all of its wonky glory. I hope you enjoyed making a card with me today. Find me, find MFT on social media. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you're up to. Say hi. Check the description box for more information. And until next time. Thank you so much for watching, and hit the subscribe button for more card making shenanigans.